Dungeons & Dragons has been exploding in popularity in recent years, in no small part due to things like the D&D movie, Stranger Things, and Baldur's Gate 3. You could even say that the rise came about because of, and I'm not joking, Vin Diesel. Dom Toretto himself and his D&D character-inspired movie showed the mainstream that Dungeons & Dragons wasn't just for nerds. But, arguably, no name is more responsible for the new player wave than Critical Role. The question is, are these guys a blessing to the game, or a curse? Welcome to Rogue's Roll Call, my name's Cam, welcome back to another video. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons, so if that's your kind of thing, then I would love it if you stuck around. Today we're chatting about a very popular piece of D&D discourse that comes up like once every year or even more. Critical Role, and the shockwave of influence that they have had on the game and its players. So we'll be having a closer look into the criticism for these guys, and trying to have a nuanced discussion about it. But at the risk of wasting too much more of your time, if you came here for an unbridled dunk fest on this group, you're in the wrong place. I don't think they're bad people, and spoiler alert, I think their cultural impact on D&D has actually been overwhelmingly positive. But hey, I'm going to hear out those of you that don't feel the same way, and I will try to understand where you're coming from. I promise. So in the words of Matt Mercer, Critical Role is a show
where a bunch of us nerdy-ass voice actors sit around and play Dungeons & Dragons. Yeah.
Critical Role is larger than the cast we see on screen. They are at this point an established company, and we'll get into that, but let's take a quick look at the main roster. Matthew Mercer, arguably the world's most well-known dungeon master and also the voice for a metric ton of popular characters, including Leon, Levi, McCree, and Minsk. BAFTA winner Ashley Johnson, voice of Ellie in The Last of Us. Sam Riegel, voice of Phoenix Wright and Donatello. Laura Bailey, an absolute titan in the voice acting world, voice of Trunks and Mary Jane to name a few. Travis Willingham, the group's actual half-giant and voice of Cell, Thor, Knuckles, and more. Liam O'Brien, voice of Gaara. Sorry if I said that wrong, I haven't watched Naruto. And Captain Ukitake, Taliesin Jaffe, voice of The Flash, Liv, and more. Last but not least, Marisha Ray, voice of Maya Rua, again I'm sorry, and AJ Mason. That is the core cast of Critical Role. But from time to time you'll see a bunch of other people who are pretty well known in like the voice acting and D&D and just YouTube space in general, coming to the table as guests. I'm not going to give you a full history of the show, but about 10 years ago, well before any of these people were as successful or famous as they are now, they were playing D&D in an apartment for a channel called Geek and Sundry. There was also another member in the beginning, but there were some dramas behind the scenes, so he left. There's some really great videos covering all of that from Super Geek Mike if you want to know more. So, time passed, the show gained popularity, and what was once a group of friends with a little bit of backing grew into a group of friends with their own enormously successful company, centered around D&D and the stories this cast of performers were telling, all within Matt Mercer's fictional world of Teldore. They went from selling out 100 shirts.
They're sold out? They're now sold out.
T-shirts are sold out?
We didn't even finish telling you people. Let us finish our sentence first.
To selling out stadiums. Their first campaign was adapted into a wildly successful show on Prime called Vox Machina, which for the record is just, in my opinion, like a really good fantasy show, even if you're not like a D&D fan. Whether you see it as a good or a bad thing, Critical Role are directly responsible for tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people getting into Dungeons & Dragons. The guy who voiced Thor doesn't look like the people who play D&D in all the movies and TV shows.
I thought it was just for basement-dwelling nerds. Hey, that actually looks pretty fun. I could do that.
That's Critical Role on the surface. Perhaps it wasn't always just a regular group of D&D players, and that's certainly not what it is now. But love them or hate them, they have had a huge part to play in Dungeons & Dragons breaking out of that box that media has always put it in. The Matt Mercer effect is a term that has been coined for DMs who will watch Critical Role and try to replicate that for their own table. XP to Level 3, a really great and popular D&D YouTube channel, has made a pretty funny skit video that really says it all. Critical Role is a D&D game between people that I personally genuinely believe see each other as family. It's pretty clear to me from the chemistry, the inside jokes at the table, and their personal social posts that they aren't just colleagues clocking in for work. But Critical Role is not just a group of people playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's just not. They are a popular show and a company with employees that rely on the success of that show. That success depends on how entertaining the game is to watch. I think most people that have played enough D&D can vouch for this. Watching other regular people play D&D in real life can be pretty boring if you're not directly involved. Like if you go over to your mate's place and they're like, oh, hang on, we're just in the middle of a D&D game, and you go and sit on the couch while you watch these people sit around a table and play, I don't know, maybe it will be really entertaining for you, but for most people I think it's gonna get a little bit tedious. So Critical Role inherently relies on playing the game in a way that wouldn't be common for a home game. The cast are all actors, they're entertainers, and that is what they're doing on the show. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they aren't enjoying the game itself, I still think they're playing and having fun, but they all know that they have a responsibility now to everyone else there, especially to their employees, to entertain. The stories and the personal interactions on the show are very dramatic and theatrical. At certain times, it can reach the point to where it seems like they're acting on an actual show. I'm not just talking about the cast doing voices either. They'll turn to each other and act out these moments of intense passion, anger, or sadness. If that's how you and your players want to play the game at home, that's great. Pop off. I'm not being facetious, I mean that. If that works for your group and you're having fun, nothing else matters. But to a lot of people, maybe even most people, that level of immersion can just be way too intense for a tabletop game that they play once a week. So, when some players see their DM start putting on a Matt Mercer performance, overdoing the sound effects or getting too elaborate with passing NPC personalities, they can start to feel distracted from the game, or they can feel like the DM is much more interested in putting on a show than actually letting them play. The Matt Mercer effect, I think, is very real, but you know who's most sick of the Matt Mercer effect? Matthew Mercer. He has explicitly and on multiple occasions spoken out about this. He's advocated countless times for DMs avoiding his playstyle and building their own. Matt understands and has acknowledged his influence, but he's also been very clear that his style of DMing is unrealistic for a home game. He doesn't hide the fact that his theatrics are extreme to most people, and generally speaking, only appropriate for entertainment. I think most people in their right mind wouldn't actually blame Matt himself for people copying his behavior, but some do. I can't speak on Matt's behalf, I don't know the guy, but I feel like it would be pretty exhausting and to constantly see your name getting spat on because people that you don't know are copying your style, especially when you've specifically asked people to not do that. I have to imagine it would go the same for the rest of the cast of Critical Role. I doubt that any one of them expects people to perform like they do, least of all at home. Now, the issues with the Matt Mercer effect doesn't just fall solely to the DMs. There are countless stories online of Critical Role fans who come into the game as a player and will expect that same level of performance from the DM. They might be brand new to D&D and their only experience is with Critical Role, so when they start playing and the DM isn't doing all of this spectacular stuff that Matt does on a show, they're like, what's going on? This isn't what I've signed up for. There's fans that will do things because they think that's what Percy or Keyleth or Scanlan would do, and then when they aren't rewarded, they invoke Matt Mercer's name like he created Dungeons and Dragons himself. Putting aside the fact that Matt is much better known for being Matthew Merciless than rewarding players, that's just a level of expectation that isn't fair for your DM or your fellow players. You're not on a show. You're in someone's dining room, and everyone is just trying to have a good time before they go back to work tomorrow. A pretty surprising amount of people are absolutely convinced that Critical Role is scripted. And to play devil's advocate, there is certainly an incentive for the people on the show to make sure that certain things happen. For the entertainment value, it could be pretty bad for the show if they had a whole session where nothing really happened. Like we said, the success of the show depends on that, and there are employees who depend on the success of the show. With that said, no, I don't think it's scripted. The core cast have explicitly said that it's not, countless times over the last 10 years.
Everything before the actual episode starts, some of that's like planned, like we have advertisers, sponsorship reads, but after that, after the intro starts, it's just Matt making it up as he goes.
I have no idea what you guys are going to do. That's the joy of it, is like keeping it secret and letting you guys experience it in the moment.
And I just don't believe they would do that so confidently if any one of the cast or crew could turn around and just expose it as a lie. Now, of course, Matt as the DM would have a pretty meticulous plan for where the story can and should go. Maybe some people will see that as scripting, and the cast would be able to pick up on cues and help Matt steer the story there. But DMs having a story path is nothing new. Having a major plot path for the campaign is a lot less important than how the characters actually get there. Maybe this is just like a parasocial side effect of being a Critical Role fan, but I also can't see how any of the cast's reactions to major events, twists, or reveals are anything but authentic. They're professional actors, sure, but come on. If this was scripted, Sam Riegel needs an Oscar trophy. There's an iconic moment in Campaign 2 involving Caleb and an orb that, you can tell, completely threw Matt off his plan. After 10 years, I just don't think the cast of Critical Role would still be this enthusiastic about Dungeons & Dragons if they were simply clocking in and sticking to a script. If it seems scripted, I think it's probably just because they are extremely experienced performers. Performing. Improvising is something that almost every actor learns at the start of their career. I don't think it's far-fetched to think that they're all just improvising. Less so from the DM, sure. If you know of any more like concrete proof that the show is being scripted, I would love to hear it in the comments below. I'm not being sarcastic, I mean genuinely, let me know. But I had a pretty thorough look through like all of the forums about this, and pretty much everything I saw was just like loose speculation, and I feel like it's scripted, you know? So if you're willing to take my personal and potentially biased opinion on this as a Critical Role fan, I don't think it's scripted. Mainly because I don't see why they would. It seems like a lot more effort and a lot less fun. Is Critical Role bad for D&D? No, I don't really see how it could be. I am sure that plenty of you have had negative experiences with fans of the show who have never played before, watch Critical Role, and then come into the game like they're experts. And that is a genuine bummer. I hear you. I can see how that would be frustrating and annoying, and I can see how that would add to the stigma about this group. But I also don't think that anyone would be more disappointed by this than the cast of Critical Role themselves. They are the reason that a lot of people tried and now love Dungeons & Dragons. And with the exception of the toxic few, more people playing the game seems like a net positive to me. All I've ever seen from the guys at Critical Role, not just from their sessions, but also their interviews and their guest conversations and their interactions with fans, is compassion and support and love for each other, the game, and the people who play it.
Matt Mercer taught me how to be a dungeon master when I moved into a new city and I didn't have anyone to play D&D with, and I was so sad and I couldn't figure out what to do with my time, so I started to watch other people play D&D, and then I realized that it wasn't that hard to do because they seemed like they were having fun because they were playing on the internet. And then I had a party and I invited all my friends over and I taught them how to build characters, and we started playing D&D together, and I never would have done that if I didn't start watching Critical Role.
When I watched them on YouTube take the stage at the stadium, it really just looked like a group of people who were still shocked and humbled by how many people enjoy seeing them play this game and tell their stories. Honestly speaking, with all of the recent like Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast drama, I don't really see Critical Role staying with Dungeons & Dragons for a lot longer. I know that they're working on a couple of their own game systems, so I'm kind of expecting that we will see a transition to one of those in the near future. Keeping the same story, sure. I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating there, and if that does happen, who knows how that'll impact D&D or the show Critical Role itself. On a side note, Critical Role and Sam Riegel in particular do the best ad reads I've ever seen on YouTube. Here's one of my favorites.
With today's top 69 tracks that are hotter than popcorn.
Honey, I'm home.
That's right, we've got music that's so good, it'll make you say...
Derek, this isn't what it looks like.
Weird. Okay, but first, a quick check-in with Traffic Copter 69.
Rachel, how could you? With my best friend?
Okay.
So, let me know how you feel about Critical Role. Even if you disagree with me and have plenty of your own reasons for not liking these guys or their impact, I'm open to hearing your thoughts in the comments below. The show is it's certainly not for everyone, I understand that, but I also think we can acknowledge that the red flag fans of the show, like the toxic Critical Role fans, I think surely we can acknowledge that that isn't the fault of performers simply performing, especially if those performers have time and time again spoken out against that type of behavior. Everyone plays D&D in different ways. As long as they're having fun, I stick by that. That's all that matters. This happens to be how Critical Role plays the game because they're doing it for an audience, and who knows, maybe they would play it like this at home too, even if they didn't have an audience. They are like theater kids, you know? Theater kids do that kind of stuff. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, especially for watching through the whole video. Plenty more Dungeons & Dragons content to come, so whether you're a player or a DM, or maybe you've never even played D&D and you're just interested, stick around. Next time you do sit down for a session, make sure you tell your DM that I said you can roll with advantage. Trust me, they'll know. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya.